Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Happy to have you, our first webinar on January, kicking the year off with the team at OutSystem. Let me actually share my screens and we can actually see a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. So in this webinar, we're going to have the team at OutSystem who will introduce themselves in a minute. Talk a little bit about working together as a customer marketing team. They'll take it, as you can see, they're a team of 5, led by Heather, and they'll share how they started, how they built the team, how they work today, and some interesting plays they have around managing their work and their projects. So super excited to have the OutSystems team here with us. Thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to share with everybody from your experience and knowledge. These are the things we're going to touch. So we're going to start with a quick kickoff of a couple of things. Then we'll have the team introduction, I guess, and then we'll start going through this agenda of how do you start a program, how do you scale your program, operating model, collaboration between a team, and so on. In Zoom, we have the Q&A section. So just feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. That way we can keep on looking at them and answering as we go. We could, of course, also use the chat to write stuff, but questions would be really good to have inside the Q&A, just keeps it much easier for all. Before we begin and introduce the team and dive directly into the content, we want to talk about a couple of things we want to share. First of all, as you all know, the top 100 is now live. Voting is live. So voting is ending tomorrow. We have 491 people nominated to the top 100 campaign. That's 30% increase from last year, which is great. More activities. We have already 5,500 votings, but there's still time till tomorrow. So we're hoping to cross the 6K. So first thing, don't forget, after this webinar, not now, go vote for top 100. That's one thing. Second thing we want to talk about is CLG Campus, different activities you have there. So just remember, there's a whole area of content for this industry. This webinar, after we have it recorded, we will also upload it eventually as an on-demand webinar into the CLG Campus. So feel free to go to the CLG Campus and get more industry content, podcasts, webinars on demand. There's discussion forums, the job board, and so on. We also have great workshops. Scott is leading those. So we have one tomorrow with Christine talking about, I think it's basically kind of managing or building a team of 1, and how do you kind of work your customer marketing in a team of 1. Then we have a workshop with BT later on creating customer marketing awards program. And we also have a workshop on how to launch a world-class customer advisory board. This one we're actually doing combined. So we're first doing a workshop for customers, then we'll do something both in campus and actually a webinar for everybody, because we just heard a lot of people asking about creating customer advisory boards. So that's just some intro about all that stuff. Just quickly about Base, we're a customer marketing platform. We help companies identify their advocates and basically engage them in real time and track, so you can all report and say, this is how much we influenced revenue. We helped you bring so-and-so deals and references and so on. We live on top of the Salesforce CRM or HubSpot CRM or other types of CRMs that you have, and help you do both self-serve and managed mode. We help you reach out to your customers and update the data about who can be referenceable and what have they done, and so on. And we help internal teams like product marketing and other marketing find customers for different reference activities. Seen great success with our customers, but with that, I really want to jump into the main thing, the main dish today, which is this webinar. So with that, I'll stop talking and let Heather and the team introduce themselves and take us through the journey of how they work at OutSystems. And I'll also stop sharing screen.
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate the invite to share what we've learned working as a team for the past number of years, and how we started small and have grown into what we are today. So what I thought I would do is just share a couple of slides just to give you context on how our team is currently structured, and then we'll dive into some of the discussion topics that we had for today. All right, is that looking okay? All right. Perfect. So we have our team of 5, as Gal mentioned here today. In addition to our team of 5, we also have a contract writer that we pull in, which is a very valued contribution when we're working on customer stories and videos. So I'm Heather and I lead the team. And so we have Marco and Maria here with us today who focus more on our story operations side. And then we have Mariam and Toni who are joining us to talk more about the work that we do with our ambassadors, who are our advocates, the customer champions that want to share their experiences and get more out of their relationship with OutSystem. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we do have a contract help that gets us across the line with those customer stories. So our North Star is very aspirational. Like when we think about what would we love to see in the end state, which is that every customer win, whether it's new logo coming in or expansion ARR, whatever it is that is influenced by a customer, meaning that somebody in the market saw some great things that our customers have done and the value that they're getting from the platform, or an existing customer is learning through the network and community that we've created for them to get more success out of their platform. So that's what all of our programs are really built around, designing to accomplish. And the way that we are structured is, so in addition to overall responsibility for leading the team, I do focus on our CAB, which is what we call the OutSystems Advisory Council. And then if you think about 2 kind of splits, as I mentioned earlier or alluded to earlier, we have a story operations side, which is mainly Maria and Marco and Nigel, our contract writer, as well, which is really about looking for those opportunities to tell our customer story in some way, whether it's a written format, a video, other ways of getting our stories out into market. They're really about looking for those opportunities, working with the customers to tell their stories, and then getting them out into our internal teams for usage, as well as the external channels for the market to see them. And then on the ambassador side, we have, as I mentioned, Maria and or Mariam and Toni, and they're really all about identifying those customer advocates and working to nurture their relationships with them, promoting their success. And then that, of course, includes our reference program as well, which is a very big component of the work that they do. And then we have our online reviews program, which is something that I work on as well with Toni, and she's been primarily managing the work stream around that. And that's something that is very important to our business, but also kind of runs in the background as well, those ongoing campaigns that we just need to stay on top of and make sure that we're working with customers to share their opinion. And then finally, we have all of this great work has been led by Maria to enable our teams, our marketing teams, our sales, customer success, and making sure that they understand, how they can access all of the great assets that we have, listening to their feedback, making sure that everything is being optimized for them to consume and use the information to help them in their sales cycle. So that is the intro to our team, just to give you a little bit of structure and how we're currently organized. But of course, that's not how it's always been. That's where we are today, what we've run into. And you are on mute.
I was muted, apologies. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, let's start kind of, I guess, going through the questions and chatting through the theme. First of all, just to know kind of, how did you define that North Star? I guess like it's interesting. I'm also curious how many people in the audience here have a North Star, but I mean that's an interesting North Star, having 100% of the business kind of influenced by voice of customer.
Yeah, that's been our North Star probably for a few years now. Maybe the team can help me if I'm remembering some details incorrectly, but North Star is something, the North Star concept is something, that we've had at OutSystems. A lot of the company has a North Star, a lot of the teams have a North Star. And I remember when we were thinking about what that is, and you think about North Star being very aspirational, like, something really big that you'd want to achieve. I can remember just thinking, like, how awesome would it be if we didn't even have to sell anymore, that our customers, our customers' success was out there and there was so much word of mouth that, leads just came in and they kind of closed themselves. And so that's kind of what the thinking was, when we were starting to talk through that. But I'd love to hear if the team remembers some additional context around that.
Well, let me chime in. I remember this being an ongoing discussion, and I think it stabilized, as you mentioned, Heather, like a few years, and it was like I would say a very important moment in time. Like we finally have our aspirational um, impact metric, if you will, like that can and will and is guiding everything that we do. So just to mention that, I remember those discussions back and forth. Like we have to set in stone something that kind of really get us all together and makes us gear all of our efforts towards the same, goal.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about how did you start the program, or if somebody's starting a program, running a program of one, like how do you get to it? What do you do first?
Yeah, and I'll start with that because I am very thankful for the opportunity that I had to start the program actually, gosh, about 6-ish years ago. It was back in 2016. And when we created the role of a global customer advocacy function, I was pretty excited to jump into that. I had previously been in a field marketing role and very engaged with customers through that work anyway, and really saw a lot of opportunity to work with our customers and help grow our business. And so, I had the grand idea that I'm going to build this huge plan that includes all of these different things that you would think of related to customer advocacy. But it was really just, it's too much. And I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people who are working as a team of one. There's an opportunity to do so much, and you want to do a lot, and you're getting asked to do a lot, but you're not going to do anything effectively, excuse me, if you try to do everything. So what I looked at was, what are the priorities coming from our senior leadership at that time? And at that time, it was a CAB. And then it also was a reviews program that was back in the days of Gartner Peer Insights just starting. And so we, along with a lot of other people, didn't even have a presence. And so that was very, very important because market leadership for OutSystems is very important. And so, really started with those things first. And what I really took away from that is, it's really helpful to choose 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on, the scope of work and what you have bandwidth to do. But start with those priorities that are going to resonate to the business, and that will give you some quick wins, as well as establish some credibility for the program, and establish those relationships as well with the key stakeholders, and then you can build from there. So we really started with that, and then just started to chip away at those different pieces of that vision, that grand plan that had been created. And honestly, that was probably a good solid couple of years of building from that, creating a more structured advocate program. Doing customer story content was very ad hoc at that moment for a number of different reasons. And so I was spending more time with the people side, that what eventually became ambassador side, as well as these cabs and reviews, spending more time with that. So that was the first couple of years. And then, we things evolved as our business, and we started to a team started to be formed. And so maybe Marco can share a little bit about how we scaled up from there, because he was part of that group as well, as we all came together around, I think, 2018 or so.
Yeah, that's right. And I came from a previous role in product management at the time called customer intelligence. So I was so much tied into researching customers and kind of crafting these internal customer stories, that then when I joined Heather's team and all of this effort, that was something that we started to kind of standardize, like that process from researching to delivering, those first early internal stories. And then another big, I would say, milestone at that time was really starting to create and being more, aware of what we already have published, because at that time, at that point in time, we already had some case studies published, but there wasn't any place where we would, a library of customer stories. So we started to categorize our stories, understanding where do we have stories, where do we have gaps, where we have a lot of stuff already, where are we missing or falling short. So that was another big, I would say, early achievement at the beginning. And then as I was saying, there was another, the connection with the content team at that time, which was actually responsible for delivering stories, with another, you know, very important step in this process, really merging efforts with the team and helping really shorten the time to publication by, great research and enabling great interviews to happen by, putting all together all that information that is vital for the interview to go, as well as really helping overseeing and the process itself from end to end. I would
I guess a
even
quick question there, by the way, is how did you identify which stories are missing? What's important to focus on? Like, was there any way that you could run that analysis?
That's a good point. So as we started to create our library, we started to get more aware of what we have. Like, for example, categories such as countries or geos, industries, and even use cases. It happens that OutSystems is it's a one product company, and so that one product, that platform, has lots of different use cases, and that was kind of our level of differentiation, if you will. So we started to categorize applications, use cases, and all those sort of things, and that was what allowed us to have a good snapshot of coverage of stories. And for sure, we wanted to enable, our global operation with representation of use cases and stories across the globe. So yeah, just to finalize a little bit more about this initial stages and steps, I would call out also, like, by being in Heather's team and starting to work together, we were able to understand like synergies with like customer accounts where we have an ambassador but we don't have a story. So let's figure out, if there's a gap that we want to fill, and if we have an ambassador, let's just make the most out of this. And this kind of synergies were very fruitful since the beginning, because we had this holistic point of view from these all different programs that we were running. And I would say that these are kind of the main points I would highlight as first milestones that we achieved by merging our efforts all together.
And just to understand timeline, how long is this program running? So maybe people are thinking, okay, but they built this in a year, they built this in 10 years, like.
As Heather was saying, I think we merged efforts in the beginning of 2018.
Yeah, it was something like that. And the advocacy program started around 2000, I think mid-2000, that work. And then Marco, you had already been doing that background work, I think not long after that, even started doing some of that customer intelligence work.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then jumping, I guess, back in with around 2018 is when we really started again to see synergies and merge efforts from different areas of the business. And it was sometime late that year that I got the opportunity to lead the team. And then that's when the vision for the ambassador started to take hold, and we were able to bring Mariam on to focus on that. And then, of course, that's a whole other set of priorities that she was able to do and to focus on. So yeah, that's kind of how we started. And then, we can continue diving in a little bit deeper to how we continue to evolve over the past 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I could maybe say, so we started, now we're a team of 2, myself and Toni, in terms of, who's focused on the ambassador program. But originally it was just me working on, as Heather mentioned, the ambassador program. I was recruited on to really drive that program. And my initial focuses was really on recruitment and growth. So we were really looking at scaling the program and how we could get more advocates on board, because when I joined, it was a fairly small group, and Heather's main focus was obviously on the CAB as well. That was the primary focus for the business. But then what we really needed to do was build a global network. So I was primarily focused on that. But what came clear and what I really championed from the start was, right now we a program and we're recruiting, but we're not really offering that much, right, to our customers. We're really just trying to get a group of people who we have identified as advocates and are willing to do things for us, right, to advocate for us and inspire others with what they're doing with the platform. But what was missing was the get, right? What do they get from the program? How are we engaging our ambassadors? And that was a key gap that we identified. And we really wanted to differentiate ourselves from other advocacy programs by focusing on that. So I then became very focused on building a number of engagement initiatives for our ambassadors. And this isn't the focus of today's webinar, so I won't go into the details of that unless I get questions on what we do from an engagement side of things.
It is interesting, so you can go into it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, if people are interested, so we run a number of things like ambassador exchanges. So those are actually webinars hosted by our ambassadors for ambassadors. So we actually give our customers an opportunity to meet other customers and share what they're doing. It doesn't have to be, a straight case study. It could be cultural. It could be about their team. It could be technical, and there's various different topics. We also give our ambassadors an opportunity to get closer and build trust with our product teams. So we do product webinars once a quarter. We're also we originally did product Ask Me Anything via our Slack channel, which is another engagement thing that we offer for our ambassadors. But we're now moving that to a webinar where we get questions ahead in time, so our teams can prepare and make the most use of our time, where we'll have Ask Me Anything with our product team. And that's where our customers get the opportunity, our ambassadors, it's exclusive to our ambassadors, to speak with our product teams, ask questions, etc. And that's really, really valuable as well. We also have a LinkedIn channel, which Toni can talk about, and she'll talk a bit more about some learnings that she's had, I think a bit later on as well, about always learning and getting feedback from our customers to make sure we're always improving the customer experience. But my point was as I got more focused on engagement, I then found it very difficult to manage recruitment, engagement, as well as the reference program, which I was also leading, which is where I'm responsible for sourcing references for prospects and also existing customers. So that's when the need became clear to grow and build a business case, for someone like Toni, who is a great addition to our team, to join. So it was really important for us to have the engagement program going, get the results from that. So we were always measuring, the results from that program to show that it does have an impact. So, for example, we were looking at, ambassadors, their ARR, right? Like, how does it grow ambassadors, customer accounts with ambassadors versus accounts without? And we found that accounts with ambassadors typically spend more, right? And they were less likely to churn. So we were able to track things like that. And build a business case for having a program that had enough resources to drive both the recruitment and growth side of things and the strategy of the program, as well as the engagement side of things.
I think it's super important because especially in current economy, but in any time, like, you have to prove the ROI of all these activities, and you have the value. And like you said, it's smarter to take on responsibilities, show the outcomes, show the ROI, so show how it's influencing the business, and then request for more resources, more people, and grow the team. That I think it's a great approach in any business, but definitely in our space. So that's great that you shared that, and it's interesting that you were able to kind of track and show. We've seen that across a lot of programs, that it makes sense, right? You have a loyalty program, you have advocates that are engaged. Of course, there's likelihood that they will retain more, that they will grow their business and share of wallet with you, but you have to prove it. You have to correlate the number and show it, whether you do it with an analyst and spend a lot of work on it, or you can do it automatically. So that's super interesting. There's a couple of questions coming from the audience. So in this case, I think they're both for you, Mariam and Toni. So I don't know if you want to take them, but one of the questions from Sarah is like, how well attended are the Ask Me Anything webinars? And another one is also from Steve here. Let me scroll down. Yeah, feel free to answer those as we go now or later.
Yeah, I can take the one on, so I'm not sure whether the Ask Me Anything was product or the product webinars. There's two different ones. So one is the product webinars where it's led by product teams, and they typically run through things like either a new feature, it could be like an EAP coming up, it could be a deep dive into something that we're launching, or it could be something specific or technical, or as I mentioned, like deep dives into specific topic areas. But those are very well attended. So we normally get from anywhere between sort of 40 to 80 attendees live. To give you some context, we have around 500 ambassadors globally, and those we typically run live just for our EMEA and Americas, which are around about 80% of our total network, and we have about 20% in the APAC region, a little bit under actually. I'm going to let Toni actually talk about the AMAs, because we used to run them in a certain way and now we're moving to a different experience, and I'll let Toni explain sort of why we're making that change and some more around that as well.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So essentially we decided to switch over from Slack because we have our ambassadors on a couple of different platforms, and we really wanted to make sure that they're getting value out of the program and that these events are, really tweaked to, what they prefer. So I think getting feedback from your ambassadors is super important, and kind of going with time, you see that things change. I mean, things change so often, and social media is always changing, and kind of just going ahead with, what is popular and seeing what your advocates also think is popular, and going with that is important because things are always changing. So I think moving from Slack to LinkedIn was a decision that needed to be made, not only, to condense everything, but it's a decision that our ambassadors really kind of voted for. And kind of to go with Steve's question, like, how do we enable customers to engage with each other? I think there's a ton of ways to do that. And I think that, sorry. I think that providing like a lot of different opportunities for them, whether that be over LinkedIn, whether that be over a survey, that really allows them to kind of give their opinion. And so I think just going down that route and really seeing what's important for them and what they want, and, just providing them the opportunities is super important. So that's kind of how we let them engage with each other. We kind of get their feedback and then move in whatever direction they're
You also
like.
mentioned that you give them time to run webinars to others. So that's also
Yes.
another way of engagement.
Exactly. So, not only just us engaging with them, but allowing them to engage with each other is super important. And I think giving them that ability also lets them feel like, okay, like I have a voice and I'm going to be heard. And, it's not only us engaging with them, but it's them engaging with each other. So I think that's really important when having like an ambassador program.
And just to directly answer the question on the AMA attendance, so it wasn't being as well attended on the Slack, which is why we have moved it to a webinar format, and why we're moving off Slack in general to LinkedIn as well. We thought if we actually gave customers enough time to prepare in advance with their questions, that would be a better customer experience for us then to address those questions live in a webinar format, as opposed to the Slack, which was basically like a 30-minute live chat with our team. But people are not always available. Not everyone has access to Slack, etc. People might not just necessarily have a question top of mind. So we wanted to give them a bit more time. So just very wanted to address that question directly as well.
Yeah, and can I add just one other point on this too, which is, I think, important to engagement, is looking at your audience as well. So our team primarily engages with IT decision makers. So these are, CIOs, directors, VPs. So they're not going to be as likely to be engaged in this format. So it was trying to figure out what's going to be most beneficial to them. Where do they spend most of their time? And so I think that's going to be probably different depending on, what type of users and, champions that you engage with. So.
Okay. Two more questions and then let's get back to our agenda. First of all, one more question from Steve here was like, how do you gauge customer satisfaction of all your programs? I don't know if you do that.
Yeah, I can definitely answer that question. So kind of just like piggybacking off what I said before, I think, whatever you have to kind of go into it willing to take risks, and you have to be able to look at what you've done in the past and say, okay, this is or isn't working. So you can, I think it's always safe to start out like with surveys, don't be afraid to get to know what people are liking and what they're not liking. And I think just taking that into consideration and measuring it that way can be super, super helpful. So I think that's ultimately the direction we go in.
I guess the last one here, and it might go also to the content and storytelling team, but how do you source advocates or customer stories from your community? Like, is there any automated process for it? Interested to see what do you do with that. I mean, for us, for Base, we normally, and we have like great stories with some of our customers like Alteryx that got a story from Delta Airlines or JP Morgan Chase. Nobody would believe you'll get that through an automated request, but they got that in from an automated request. So there's way to automate it, but there's also ways to just reach out to customers, and interested to hear how you guys do it.
So maybe I can take this one, and the team then can chime in. So initially, a lot of of that was our proactive reach out, and by researching customer accounts and understanding what they were doing and understanding if they were happy, we were the ones doing the path of getting the customer to go public with a story. And that in conjunction with the account teams, the customer success managers, and all of that. At some point in time, we, I guess, started to really bring up the awareness within our company for the existence of all of these assets by actually something which Maria helped us a lot, which is the content distribution and curation that we initially didn't have. And so the awareness of the existence of the assets was so big that I guess at some point in time people became interested in, hey, I have this happy customer that wants to document their story. They are the ones wanting to share. And so it's really a privilege and an honor to be working with so many happy customers that we actually have a lot of demand from different regions and different types of scenarios of utilization of our product.
So you're lucky, and you have people raising their hands and saying, "I'd love to share my story."
Yes, I would say so. Of course, we will cover that also late, I guess, later on, which is, of course, we also have challenges in getting approval. Sometimes these processes get started, but at the end of the day, it's for some reason it doesn't get approved or so. But we can cover that later on.
I think it's
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, just real quick, I was going to say, I think it's important to share as well another way that we are able to identify, what our ambassadors are interested in doing, and if they're interested in sharing their stories, is by the introductory calls that we try and do with our ambassadors. Now, granted, we can't do this with every customer, and not every customer is available, but where possible, when someone joins our ambassador program, or after we've recruited them, or they've been nominated, whichever way they come in, we try and have an initial call with them where we understand, what kind of advocate are they, or what type of customer are they, because they're not actually all advocates potentially. I'll go into this a bit later if I talk about the new model that I'm working on. But I think it's really important to get that understanding to make sure that you're serving up the right opportunities for that customer as well. And you can really get an idea of the type of customer that they are as well, and what they're interested in. So we try and do that. And also our form online, when they sign up, if we don't have the opportunity to have an introductory call with them, we do also have what they're willing to do in a checkbox format. So we already have that in our records as well.
Thanks. Let's talk a little bit about your operating model. And I know that you also have this unique structure and sprints. So take us through that.
Yeah, so I'll start, and then the teams can dive into how they work more on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, we've been in this model of, as you mentioned, sprints, which is a part of our work for probably a couple of years, because I can remember back when we were all starting to work together as a team, demand, there's always a lot of demand coming in and things that we were trying to do. And we really needed to get organized in what are we working on and what's most important, so that we didn't lose sight of the priorities. And so what we really started out with was like an initiatives map. So imagine a spreadsheet with all the big initiatives that each person was working on, to try to understand what's what's the bandwidth that we can cover across the quarter? Is it too heavy on one team at one point in time? And then from that, we were thinking, well, with all this work, what are we trying to accomplish? So let's actually put some goals so we know what we're working towards around it. And then what we also saw is there's a lot of just business as usual stuff that was happening, you know, almost in competition and sometimes with those goals, which is something that we've been working to balance the past few years as well. But anyway, what we arrived on from an actual model is we started with that initiatives map. We actually don't even do that anymore. We just focus on our quarterly goals. And then from those goals, we decided, because we want to work in a very agile way, things change very, very fast in our business. And so I sit down with each of the team every 2 weeks and we say, okay, this is what we need to focus on, the biggest priorities for that couple of weeks. And it's always, you know, related back to what those goals are and how we're progressing towards those goals. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we do a review and see how things progressed. Were there blockers, obstacles, things that need to be resolved? You know, other priorities that came in from the business, and make adjustments as we go for every 2 weeks. And then each month we actually do a group review. As a team, we have a discussion around the progress to those goals. And those discussions are always really interesting because we start to find new ideas or things that are not working, things that are working well. And in some cases, we drop things that we're working on throughout the quarter to focus on things that seem to be bringing more value. And then from a quarterly perspective, we really start to look at those impact metrics and activity metrics and things that we're doing across the business. So that's been our working model, and it has worked, you know, pretty well. So we've kept it, and we'll just adjust and tweak as we go as we need to. But the team can chime in as well with any additional points or how it's working for them. So maybe Mariam, you want to talk about it, because your model is even taking that a bit further in how you and Toni operate and some of the opportunities and challenges that you've had.
Yeah, no, I think as well, Heather was mentioned, you know, the 2 week sprints. I actually, after a long while, we'd worked in 2 week sprints. I was like, actually, something isn't quite working for me in the 2 week sprints. So I actually suggested to Heather, you know, can I do a 1 week sprint? I just prefer to push myself to have tighter deadlines. I'm someone who needs to work to deadlines. So for me, I was like, okay, actually, can I shorten mine to a week? And I just found that worked better for me. And funnily enough, I think Toni and I are quite similar. So Toni actually also took that on board, and we both now actually work in 1 week 1 week sprints. And Toni maybe can share how that helps her a little bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that we were working in, you know, for me personally, I've been here just about a year. So for majority of my time here, I was working with the team in 2 week sprints. And then Mariam had mentioned that she had switched over to 1 week. And I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to try that too, just because, you know, it's easy to build a big plan for yourself. And then along the way, there's a lot of things just ad hoc. And then, you know, for me, at least, I was losing a little bit of accountability having the 2 weeks. So I switched over to 1 week, and it worked so much better for me. Like Mariam said, I'm just the type of person that's better on tight deadlines. So it's just kind of focus. So I think, you know, for me personally, having just the 1 week sprints helped me prioritize a little bit more. And, you know, it's nice to do it that way too, because there's a little wiggle room. So, you know, maybe some weeks we didn't get as much as we needed done, so we push it to the next week. And it's just really to guide you into your priorities. So I think, you know, having that and keeping yourself accountable, as well as your manager keeping you accountable and your team, and really being there to support each other, it's super useful.
I would add just one thing, which I think it's very, very helpful, which is to be very specific on what you want to achieve for the week. Because I think there is this tendency to write a very broad goal or task, and then when you get to act on it, then you get to the end of the sprint and you don't know if you completed it or not. So I think having either a very specific thing or having very specific steps to achieve the more broad goal is something very useful as well.
And MJ, you work in 2 week sprints, right? but you like to break it down, right, to the smaller tasks that are going to get you there, right? I think you work slightly differently.
I usually try to, I work with 2-week sprints. I still have a lot of work to do in terms of perfecting this, because I do feel like sometimes I still do that thing of setting a broad goal, but I do try to, okay, so what do I need to achieve this, and these are the specific things. And another thing is to try not to overload your sprint with things to do. Or if you do that, make sure you prioritize, because there's always this tendency to think that we can do a bunch of things, but maybe if you just set 3 goals and you can achieve those 3 goals, then those are the impactful ones. I think that's also something important.
Great. Let's discuss some best practices and challenges you have. I guess split them by the teams, the ambassador team, and then the story operations team.
Yeah, I can get started talking about some best practices. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, so now obviously we have 2 people, and we're split in the sense that I am mainly focused on driving the growth and the strategy of the program, and making sure everything is in line with our company strategy and focus. So right now, for example, building awareness, driving new ARR and expansion is really key, and our goals reflect this. I also manage a reference program, whereas Toni manages the engagement side. And what we realize is, as our program is growing, now that we have 2 people, and also Heather sometimes dabbles as well in the advocacy side of things, and she's still responsible for some accounts and customers, is we need to actually remodel the program. So I think I mentioned that we have around 500 customers, not accounts, but individuals. We probably have somewhere around 350 accounts that are part of that in our program. And we are always tracking our ambassadors and understanding, who's engaged, who's not. And we're starting to see a kind of divide between advocates and maybe what I might start calling insiders, so we have a really engaged group of people, and normally this pool is smaller. So we're looking at, instead of having one big ambassador program and having the same benefits for everyone, is tiering the program, even if not externally, right, for customers, internally in the way that we approach and prioritize what we do with our customers. So the advocates we're looking at moving into a marquee and strategic account, which are based on the big bet kind of customers who we think are going to move the needle in terms of our company goals, like awareness, driving ARR, and then our biggest references, for example, and then looking at that's a different goal, right, versus the insiders, who are customers who want to be part of an ambassador program, in the sense they want to be part of some kind of customer program where they can, they want to meet other customers, they want to learn about the product, right? We want to build product trust with them, but maybe they're not the speakers, or they're not allowed to do certain things. However, there are still different goals there, because your goals there are going to be customer retention, right? Customer satisfaction. We do have goals around expansion, ARR as well. So that's what we want to do with that group versus the advocate. So right now we're working on remodeling the program, tiering the system, and having different benefits available for each of those customers. And like I said, it may not be that it's externally publicized as that. We're still working on those finer details, but definitely for us internally, we need to do that. And also, our program is just too big now in terms of the customers. So we really need to focus on where the company needs to focus when it comes to our advocates. So we're very heavily focused, on certain markets right now.
Great. Anything else, or we move to Maria?
So I can talk a little bit in terms of the story side and what we've seen, what we've been learning throughout these years. So we have what we call the stories pipeline, which is our workflow and the backbone of our stories production. We have a project management tool that we use for this, and it's common to other teams across marketing. So that's something that's really useful, and that we think is really important to ensure a smooth project process, because we're not the only team that's involved in producing the stories, right? We get to a point where it's the web and it's the design team that have to work on it. So having this this common workflow where we can have transparency and visibility, and where all the stakeholders can do their steps, it's really helpful. I think one thing we've learned throughout the years is not to overcomplicate it. I think there are the key stages of what it takes to bring a story to life and to public, but you really don't need to complicate it, just make it simple. And then another thing that we've been trying to experiment with is different formats. So historically, we've been very focused on case studies. Okay, so it's like the what Marco likes to call it, the jewel of the crown, and it's really a very rich and very versatile format, because you can reuse and you can take
Written case studies.
A written case study, yeah, sorry for that. Also some video, but mostly written. And we've been trying to explore other shorter formats lately, even just get a quote, get a more visual format, not only because these are, of course, like Toni said earlier, things change and maybe people don't have the time spent to look at such a big story, but also because this can be delivered faster. They require much less time from the customer to get approval, and we know how critical that can be, and how difficult it can be to get a customer to approve a story. So another thing related to that, because it has really been usually our biggest challenge, is to make sure that we have set the expectations with the customer. We usually have a prep call. We ensure that is ready to go public and that they know what is the process and what they can expect. And another one is to have a deadline or a compelling event that will mark a date for delivery, right? So for instance, we have our annual event where we deliver the innovation awards, and we have a few customers, and we always try to use the innovation awards as an excuse to deliver content and customer stories and case studies and videos with these customers. And then something that's very related to my role, which is making sure that the entire company knows about what we are doing and that the sales people are using. And maybe if the team is small, you need to find the right partner in field enablement or sales to make sure that people know about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that, because that was, I think, a pivotal moment when Maria came onto our team almost 3 years ago now. Is, you know, Marco had been running the stories, and just again going back to the one person approach, he was getting the stories published, but didn't have the bandwidth to keep that going, as well as let people know what's happening. And Maria came in to really take it from the moment that it gets approved and how do we get it published and distributed throughout the company. And that's made a huge impact, because that really ties into the evangelism. And so letting other people know about all these great assets and understanding how they're being used and making changes based on that feedback and making it more valuable. And I think that's been very instrumental in how we've grown as a team and been perceived within the company.
Thank you. And it's interesting. I mean, the fact, I mean, going back to this, what Mariam was talking about, also like looking at expansion and ARR. Again, we see that more and more this year with teams looking at, how can we influence revenue even more? So suddenly customer marketing teams and advocacy programs are now talking expansion, upsells. So it will be, when you know the answers of how you're going to do it, it will be interesting to learn and share and see what works out and share with others. But I know that you're just strategizing on it right now. So interesting to see. Okay, I guess for the last 10 minutes we have, first of all, for all the people with us, happy to get any questions you have. The last topic I know that we want to talk about is the collaboration, like internal collaboration in the team, and also cross-functional collaboration, I guess, with other teams. I guess we can take that for the next kind of couple of minutes and then see if we have any other questions from the audience.
Yeah, so from the way that we collaborate, I think, yeah, we have that within the team and externally with our other partners in the business. So Maria, were you gonna take some of those points?
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit. I think there are a few key collaborations, and the customer success, sales, field enablement, these teams. I think it's very critical that we keep working. Also, like Marco was saying, if you have a close relationship with these teams, they will come up to you with the right customers for your advocacy program and with the right stories to tell. And on the other hand, we also have a lot to offer to them, right? One thing that we set up a couple of years ago, Mariam had this great idea of creating a Slack channel to support the references program, and so that people could ask about for a reference call, and so this channel grew so much that we had some people in the sales org say that it was the most valuable Slack channel in the company. And now we have people from sales and we have people from other teams responding to the channel that we set up, so that we kind of as a help desk, that we were the help desk, right? And another thing in terms of collaboration that I would like to add is that try to see where the sales team is and the customer success is, and try to be on the tools that they use, because it's much easier. People are not very, it's not very easy to get people to change. And so if we can use the tools that they use, I think it's very helpful.
Great.
I think we've covered a lot of how we collaborate as a team in some of the conversations. Is there anything else you would want to add here?
We have one question actually coming in from the audience. I think we touched it a bit, but maybe deeper now. So the question is, for a customer marketing team of one, you're a bigger team, so but interesting to know, how would you focus, what would you focus on, or kind of how would you prevent yourself from juggling around too many programs at once, if you have any advice regarding that? I think you mentioned tying it into the business priorities, which I think is very true, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that at least is my answer as far as what I saw when I got started is, yeah, you cannot do everything. So you have to really be aligned to the priorities of the business and do what's realistic, and then just start chipping away at the other things as you can. But maybe there might be some learnings from the rest of the team as well. Just
I would say just maybe find the people in the other teams that can help drive some of those programs that you don't have bandwidth to, and then as things evolve, maybe the team grows to hopefully a team of two, and you can gain back. But I think finding the right partners across the organization to help you deliver the things that you can't, or that are not so high priority on your list.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing would be, what tools, what processes that you can use to help scale the work. That's one thing that is not my strong point anyway. And so I wasn't experimenting a lot with that in my time, and something that I think having the rest of the team's experience has helped us really scale as we started to grow together as a team as well. So think about that side of it, not just the work side, but how do you support it through tools and processes, automation.
I would also bet on that automation side of things and visibility side of things, like anything that saves us time from providing visibility, status, what do we have, and all those sort of things are very useful to save us time. And I guess it's very much tied to the business goals, but being able to prove the value of, for example, reference calls and influence ARR directly might be a good way for really start justifying that these programs are having a direct impact on the business. And I would say that reference calls are very much the standard customer proof that is easily trackable or traceable. It might be a good start to justify the value of that.
Yeah, I mean, what we see a lot of times is, I think it's very important to have alignment with your manager and just say, this quarter, the next 6 months, what is the most important? And like Marco mentioned, there's like, we call them the 3 R's: references, reviews, and referrals. Those are very easily tied to money, right? References, you can prove that they closed the deal. Reviews hopefully bring you in leads, and referrals, again, there are kind of, high quality leads. So maybe those are the programs. If you have to tie it to revenue and money, those are the programs to start first. Like, Mariam talked about, maybe now it's more important to actually see how you can run expansion and upsell programs and focus on that first. Or if the brand needs more brand trust and authority, then it's actually customer stories and reviews. So, you should have that open discussion with the manager and say, listen, we can't really do everything in a team of 1. Let's decide what's most important in the next 3 months and roll out 2 things well. We do those well, we show the results. Ideally, we can also measure the impact. Then let's discuss what are the next 2 things that are most important. Like,
Exactly.
but it's an alignment discussion you have to have.
Definitely.
Okay, we're in the last minutes. Anything else anybody wants to add, or any last question before we say thank you so much and goodbye to all the team here?
I was just going to say, keep listening to your customers. If there's one thing that you should never forget to do, is keep listening to your customers, keep asking for feedback, and wherever you can find the opportunity to speak to your customers, speak to them and give them that opportunity to speak to you directly. It's amazing what you can learn in a 20-minute phone call with a customer.
Super. Amazing. We're at time. So thank you so much, Team OutSystems, for sharing all this with us. Again, this is recorded and we'll share it later with the audience. Last reminder that, last day to vote, or tomorrow, last day to vote for the top 100 CMA. And if anybody, thank you all for attending, everybody that joined this webinar. We appreciate your time as well. And thank you and have a great 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.